Hi, I am Coppéllie Cocq, Professor of European Ethnology with research interests in minority studies and in digital practices. So let's talk about ethics. You have probably and hopefully already have to think about ethics and ethical conduct in your work, your studies, your research, and this is a huge topic and a broad area. Here I will talk about ethics more specifically in digital contexts. There are two primary approaches to ethics: ethics as regulation and ethics as decision-making. A regulatory approach means focusing on rule following, the legislation. Think, for instance, of the European Union General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, of codes of conduct, and institutional ethical review processes, like in Finland through TENK, the Finnish National Board on Research Integrity. This gives us rights and wrongs. Ethics as decision-making, on the other hand, is a case-based, situated approach. This includes all the situations along the research process when we have to make reflective ethical judgments grounded in the context of the study and participants. This gives us multiple choices, what we call ethical pluralism. It is important to follow rules, legislations, etc., but it is as important and more complex to develop our ability to make ethically valid decisions. And this is not always easy and straightforward. For instance, in the case of digital data, there's a lot of online data accessible to us. But does this mean that any data published by private individuals on any internet platform or web page can be used in any purpose? Is this ethically motivated? Lots of data is public to the extent that it can be accessed, read, and downloaded by pretty much anyone. However, we have to take into consideration the context in which this data, for instance a blog post, a video, a tweet, or a Facebook update, was created. Maybe it addresses a specific reader, or a defined group of readers, or a limited audience with same shared interests, and most probably it was not created in the idea to be part of a study or a research project. The question of what is private and public online is extensively discussed in research, and in a simplified attempt to summarize these discussions, I would say that we can assume that there is nothing such as privacy on the internet. Also, we cannot assume that any data that might seem to be public can be used without any ethical considerations. Therefore, the question of private or public is not so helpful, and what we should ask is how sensitive the data is. Sensitivity is sometimes easy to identify, for instance when we talk about sexual identities or in relation to crime as a victim or perpetrator. But in other cases, it is something that requires further ethical judgment. For instance, when involving young adults, when their behaviors, opinions, etc. might not be expressed as sensitive today, but might have consequences and implications for them in 5, 10, or 15 years. Also, topics might be sensitive to some and not to others. Health and some specific diseases, for instance. Or language, something that many would not reflect upon or just be something that they have, learn, and use as a tool for communication. Whereas in some contexts, for minorities and indigenous groups, for instance, languages can have been or can be stigmatized, and language learning or language loss can be a very sensitive topic. And since it is the responsibility of the researcher to conduct the research so that it does not cause significant risk, damage, or harm to research participants and community, and this is a core principle in research ethics, then we need to address the question of sensitivity and possible vulnerability of the research subjects, that is, the people behind the data. Another aspect is consent. Informed consent is another core ethical principle in research with human participants. This means that people should have the right to freely choose if they want to participate in a study or a research project, or to refuse, or to withdraw their participation along the study or the project. The researchers must provide all necessary information about the purpose and the content of the research, how it will be conducted, and about what will happen with the personal data collected during the project. And this is quite easy and obvious when we meet people and conduct interviews, for instance. But what about digital contexts, such as forums, groups, or when collecting big data? Admins or moderators of a group or forum might be able to give consent on behalf of a group. Or in the case of specific geographical or ethnic communities, an official authority might be able to give a collective consent. And sometimes you just have to be patient and contact people, online users, for individual consent. The implication of access to data and informed consents are two aspects among many when considering ethical choices in digital research. And these are two good things to start with. When navigating further with your digital compass, remember that in research with human participants, ethical questions focus on the interaction between researcher and research participant. In this interaction, acting responsibly, protecting the integrity and confidentiality of the participants, and establishing mutual trust and respect should be prioritized. Thank you.